The grandfather clock struck 12, but the sound was drowned out by a thunderclap that shook the entire house. Outside, the storm was biblical, a relentless curtain of icy rain hammering the windows as if trying to shatter them. Yet the cold outside was nothing compared to the ice gripping my heart in that moment. I stood in the foyer wearing only my nightgown, clutching my 3-day-old newborn daughter Lucia. Before me, like an Inquisition tribunal, stood my husband Nathaniel Sterling and my mother-in-law Beatrice. "Get out," Beatrice shrieked, her shrill voice slicing through the air. "I won't tolerate crying in this house. That girl is a curse. I told you I wanted a grandson to carry the family name with pride. Not another useless mouth to feed." I looked at Nathaniel, the man who had promised me eternal love at the altar 2 years ago. He leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, staring at the floor. "Nathaniel," I whispered, my voice trembling from cold and terror. "Please, it's midnight and it's pouring outside. Lucia has just been born. We have nowhere to go." Nathaniel finally looked up. His eyes, once warm, were now empty and dead. "My mother is right, Elena," he said with a chilling coldness. "This isn't working. You don't belong here. You're too simple, too poor, and now with the baby, the house will be chaos. I need rest. I have work tomorrow. Leave." "Leave?" I asked in disbelief, pressing my baby tighter to my chest. "Into the street? Right now? Nathaniel, I am your wife." "You were," Beatrice interrupted, flinging the front door open violently. Wind and rain rushed into the foyer, soaking the marble floor. "You were a mistake. We thought you could at least give us a worthy heir, but you failed even at that. Get out." Beatrice shoved me hard, her bony hands pushed against my shoulders, forcing me into the darkness. I stumbled, my bare feet slipped on the wet step. I fell to my knees on the rough, freezing pavement, scraping my skin, but I kept Lucia held high, protecting her with my body. My baby's piercing cry exploded, mixing with the rain. Drenched in seconds, I turned back toward the warm light of the entrance. "Nathaniel, please," I screamed. "She will get sick. Have mercy." Nathaniel looked at me one last time. There was no mercy, no doubt, only an annoyed sigh. "Goodbye, Elena. Don't come back." He slammed the door shut. The sound of the bolt sliding was the final sound of my previous life. I remained there on the ground under the storm with a 3-day-old baby and nothing but my soaked nightgown clinging to my body. The rain mixed with my tears. Fear took hold of me. A primal, animal fear. How would I survive? How would I save my daughter? They thought I was Elena, the poor orphan who came to the city looking for work. They thought I had no one. They believed throwing me out would condemn me to begging or death. What Nathaniel and Beatrice didn't know, what their arrogance and cruelty blinded him to, was that I was not alone and I was certainly not poor. I had hidden my true identity to find someone who would love me for myself. Not for my father's empire. I had pretended to be humble to escape the golden cage. But that night, as the rain washed away my innocence, I realized my mistake. I had found monsters, not love. I stood up with difficulty. I removed the cheap locket from my neck, the only treasure they believed I owned, and threw it to the ground in fury. I reached into the hidden pocket of my nightgown where I kept the one thing connecting me to my real life. A miniature satellite phone and a black titanium card. I dialed the number. "Mrs. Elena Vargas," a deep, urgent voice answered on the first ring. "Ramon," I said. My voice was no longer that of submissive Elena. It was the voice of Elena Vargas, heiress to the largest energy conglomerate in the hemisphere. "I'm at the GPS location. Bring the convoy and thermal blankets immediately." "My God, Mom, are you all right? We'll be there in 3 minutes." I hung up and stared at the closed house. I looked at the window of the bedroom I had shared with Nathaniel, where the light had just turned off. He was going to sleep peacefully after throwing his own daughter into the trash. "Sleep well, Nathaniel," I whispered into the wind. "Because when the dragon awakens, you will never have peace again in your miserable life. Before I tell you how I executed the most devastating and satisfying revenge you will ever hear, I need to ask you a favor. If you believe abandoning a newborn is the most unforgivable crime and you want to see these monsters pay, give this video a strong like right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. What comes next is proof that karma doesn't always come alone. Sometimes it arrives in a bulletproof limousine. 3 minutes later, the dark street lit up not by lightning, but by the xenon headlights of 5 black SUVs and a Maybach limousine that blocked the entire road. Armed men with umbrellas and medical equipment rushed toward me. Ramon, my head of security, wrapped me in a vicuña wool blanket before I could speak. A doctor gently took Lucia and carried her to the private ambulance in the convoy. "Mom, you're freezing," Ramon said, helping me into the Maybach. "What happened? Who did this to you?" I sat on the warm leather seats. They served me hot tea. I stopped trembling on the outside, but inside the fire grew stronger. "My own family," I said with disgust. "They threw me out at midnight with my daughter." Ramon clenched his jaw. "Do you want us to go in? My men can drag them out of bed right now." "No," I said, staring at the house through the tinted glass. "That would be too quick. Too easy. I want them to suffer. I want them to lose everything they think they own. I want to watch them crawl." "What are your orders, Mrs. Vargas?" "Take me to the central tower. Summon the lawyers and find out who holds the mortgage on this house and Nathaniel's company. I want to own everything by dawn. I want to own their lives." The following week was a silent whirlwind. While I recovered in my 3-floor penthouse surrounded by nurses and luxury for my baby, my team dismantled Nathaniel's life piece by piece without him noticing. Nathaniel and Beatrice lived on appearances. Their import company was in the red, sustained by bank loans. The house was mortgaged twice. They were poor people wearing expensive clothes. I bought all their debt. I bought the company promissory notes, the house mortgage, even the social club where Beatrice played cards to feel important. And then I waited for the perfect moment. That moment came 1 month later. Nathaniel was hosting a grand party at the house, supposedly to celebrate a new contract that was actually a trap I had set through a shell company. He was also going to introduce his new fiancée, a rich politician's daughter he hoped to marry to save his finances. It was Saturday night. The same house they had thrown me out of was brightly lit, filled with music and laughter. I was ready. I wore a blood-red haute couture gown, diamonds worth millions, and an attitude that could cut glass. "Ready, Mom?" Ramon asked. "Let's go ruin a party," I replied. We arrived in a caravan that made the guests' cars look like toys. My security guards moved aside the hired doorman. I entered through the main door, the same door they had slammed in my face. The music stopped when I walked in, not because they recognized me, but because my presence was overwhelming. No one knew who this mysterious woman in red surrounded by bodyguards was. Nathaniel stood in the center of the living room with a glass of champagne, his arm around a bored-looking blonde. Beatrice stood beside him, smiling smugly. I walked toward them. The sound of my heels echoed in the silence. Nathaniel looked at me, frowned. There was a second of confusion, then shock. "Elena," he whispered in disbelief. "Good evening, Nathaniel," I said. My voice rang clear and powerful. "I see the party is lively." Beatrice stepped forward, red with rage. "What are you doing here, you beggar?" she shrieked, unaware of the clothes I was wearing. "I told you never to come back." "Security, remove this trash." "No one is removing me, Beatrice," I said calmly. "But I'm afraid you will have to leave." "What are you talking about?" Nathaniel laughed nervously, glancing at his new fiancée. "Sorry, darling, she's my ex. She's crazy. She came to ask for money." "I don't want your money, Nathaniel," I said, taking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "I have enough to buy your life 100 times over. In fact, I already did." I signaled to Ramon. He stepped forward and handed Nathaniel a leather folder. "What is this?" Nathaniel asked, opening it. "It's the foreclosure notice," I explained, savoring every word. "And the notification of the acquisition of your company." "What?" Nathaniel turned pale. "Acquisition? By whom?" "By Vargas Global, my company." You're a nobody," Beatrice stammered. "Elena the orphan. My name is Elena Vargas, daughter of Don Javier Vargas. I hid my identity to see if someone could love me without my money. And you both taught me that some people have no heart, only an empty wallet where their soul should be." The room erupted in murmurs. Nathaniel's fiancée pulled away from his arm and discreetly stepped back. "This is a lie," Nathaniel shouted. "Read the document." Nathaniel read that the new owner of this house and Sterling Imports demands the immediate eviction of the illegal occupants. "This is my house," he roared. "Not anymore. I stopped paying your mortgage last week. Well, technically I stopped paying myself, since I am the bank now and I've decided to execute the collateral." I stepped closer to him. "You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes for what?" Beatrice asked, trembling. "To leave," I said. "Just like you threw me out into the street with nothing." "You can't do this to us." Nathaniel cried, falling to his knees. The arrogance had vanished. Elena, we have a history. I'm the father of your daughter. Daughter? I asked coldly. You mean the curse? The useless mouth? No, Nathaniel, you lost that right when you threw us into the rain at midnight. I looked at the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, the party is over. This property is closed for fumigation. I need to clean out the trash that has been living here. The guests, realizing the power had shifted, quickly began leaving Nathaniel and Beatrice alone in the middle of the room. Elena, please, Beatrice begged, trying to grab my hand. It was a joke. We were stressed. We can take care of the baby. We're family. I pulled my hand away as if burned. My family protects me. You tried to destroy me. I signaled to my guards. Remove them and make sure they take nothing but the clothes on their backs. No jewelry, no watches, no wallets. All of that belongs to the company to settle the debt. My jewelry, Beatrice screamed. They belong to my grandmother. Now they are mine, I said. Consider it payment for emotional damages. The guards grabbed Nathaniel and Beatrice. They dragged them toward the door, kicking and screaming. I walked behind them. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see the exact moment. They reached the main door. Outside, it was raining again. Poetic justice. They were thrown onto the wet sidewalk. Nathaniel fell into a puddle, ruining his suit. Beatrice lost a shoe. I stood at the threshold, dry, warm, and powerful. Do you know what time it is? I asked. Nathaniel looked up, soaked and humiliated. It's midnight, I said. The same hour you threw me out. Enjoy the weather. Where are we going to go? Nathaniel cried. I don't know, I replied, slowly closing the door. And frankly, I don't care. The sound of the bolt sliding was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. In the end, Nathaniel and Beatrice lost everything. They tried to sue me, but my lawyers crushed them in days with evidence of fraud in their company that my auditors easily discovered. Nathaniel ended up in prison for tax evasion and corporate fraud. He received 8 years. Beatrice, without a home, money, or friends, ended up in a state shelter. The last I heard, she was cleaning tables in a cheap cafe to survive. I returned to my true world. Lucia is growing up healthy, strong, and surrounded by real love. She will never lack anything, but the most important thing I will teach her is not how to spend money, but how to recognize people who are truly worthy. That stormy night broke me. Yes, but in breaking me it freed me from a lie. It forced me to remember who I am. I am Elena Vargas and no one will ever make me feel lesser again. Revenge is not about hate. It is about balance. They tilted the scale toward cruelty, and I simply returned it to its rightful place. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.